I am Heidi Benjaminson, your host of Confidence Coaching, a podcast for mothers of teenagers who want to feel less worry and more hope. Life isn't a spectator sport. Success comes to those who show up every day with a pocket full of courage, grit, and a little sparkle. I'm glad you're here. Hello. Welcome to episode 120, Accepting Reality. I'm glad you are here, my favorite podcast listeners. You get to secretly believe that you are my favorite. We always call our only daughter our favorite. This week, she called her dad her favorite dad, then quickly said he was also her least favorite dad in her quick, quippy humor. Don't worry, you all are my favorite. I'm really excited to talk to you today about accepting reality, why we resist it, the words and the thoughts that keep us from reality, and how to make progress in life. And y'all, there is no forward movement until we're able to look reality in the eye, see it for what it is, and regain our power. So here are tricky ways that our brain keeps us moving backward. It keeps us stuck and blocks us from accepting reality. Our brain says, my teenager shouldn't be smoking pot. It isn't fair that my spouse is unemployed or struggles with depression. I shouldn't have these trials. My boss shouldn't yell at me, or my son shouldn't miss these life milestones because of a pandemic. Now, picture a number line with 0 in the middle, positive numbers on the right, negative numbers on the left. Reality is 0. It is the math of life. It just is what it is. Anytime we say someone, even ourselves, should be different than we are, we go to the left, into the negative numbers. We go further away from getting solutions, which are toward the positive numbers. If we're going to the left and the negative, we waste energy, either mental or emotional, in a place where we have no power, and we're further away from making any type of progress. I saw this in such vivid color a few months ago when I called a doctor's office to schedule an appointment for my son. I called in October or so, and when I got the scheduler on the phone, she was confused as she pulled up his chart, and she kept saying, well, he should have had an appointment back in August. And she kept saying how this follow-up appointment should have been these few weeks after the initial appointment. And in my mind, all I could think was, August is in the past. I want the next appointment. We can't go back and figure out why he didn't do it then and who didn't schedule it. Let's just move forward. Please schedule a new one. And after a few minutes where she kind of wasn't accepting reality that we hadn't had that appointment in August, she then looked up the next available appointment and we made it. So that's a simple example. Notice how this comes up for you and notice the lack of control you feel when we think, oh, the past should be different. And then the shift that we feel when we look today square in the face, when we sit and accept where we are. It may not be a positive emotion, but we get our power back to make change for the future. When the pandemic started almost 2 years ago, all of a sudden, 5 people were home in my house when I had become very used to and enjoyed being home alone for lots and lots of hours during the day. I spent some time wishing everyone were back in school or work, thinking this shouldn't be happening, which had me going backwards, away from reality. I added to the anxiety of the situation by thinking it should be different. When I finally came to accept that school and work would be remote for a long time, I finally was able to come up with solutions and strategies to take care of my emotional needs. And we even came up with a creative way to do it all remote by the beach. These solutions came only after accepting what was really happening. Last week, I got a text from my son saying he needed a book for school the very next day. It was too late to order on Amazon, so I was searching bookstores close by to pick it up. My brain wanted to go to, oh, he should have asked me earlier. Okay, that's possibly true. But that thought, focusing on that, gets me into the negative numbers on the reality scale. I'm not closer to the solution of getting the book for him if I stay stuck on what he should have done in the past. I drove a ways. I got him the book because I did have time in my day. And then later, calmly, I did mention to please give me more notice, which he does actually 95% of the time. Now, if I blame him and stay stuck, I then don't take responsibility to then go and find the book. In this simple example again, we see exactly what happens in bigger, weightier life matters. Seeing and accepting reality usually puts us in the vulnerable place of deciding, who do I want to be? And when we can see what this denial of reality is blocking us from feeling and doing, we get more courage to see reality, feel the uncertainty and vulnerability, and courageously move forward. Denial usually blocks us from taking action and feeling some vulnerability, both things that our lower brain doesn't want us to feel. It wants us to sit safely on the couch watching Netflix, not taking chances, not being courageous, or showing up in life. Okay, most of us stay off the body weight scale because we're afraid of the thoughts and emotions that come up when we see reality. This is just a good way to practice, though, accepting what is. Seeing that number neutrally with not having good or bad thoughts. Maybe if we gain 10 pounds over the holidays, we may stay off the scale to avoid making health and nutrition changes, which will be more uncomfortable than staying on the comfort food path. A few decades ago, I wanted to blame other people in my life for my weight and health issues. I even thought things about my body and health should be different. Blaming others for my lack of habits and nutrition education blocked me from feeling the real power I had, which was the power to make changes, to get educated myself, and to start doing hard things. Blame is usually what stands between us being the victims of our lives and becoming the heroes of our lives. When I decided to stop blaming and accept the reality of my body, suddenly I had the power to change. Change also meant being willing to learn, to do hard things. Change, maybe trying new exercises, changing habits, which was and still can be hard. When I was willing to accept reality, I was finally able to move forward toward the positive end of the number scale. I could enact change, and I did change. Okay, let's talk a few examples of more serious situations and some ways to accept reality if we do want to move closer to solutions, at least the solutions that we have control over. In many cases where we think someone else should be different, we block ourselves from taking responsibility for who we are, for how we show up, for how we want to respond and deal with a situation. Let's say your child is doing poorly in school. Report cards come home and it has grades on it that you start to sweat looking at. Saying the child should be doing better, should be smarter, or studying more pushes you into the negative numbers, away from seeing what is really going on for the child. I also like to use the visual that thinking all of this pushes us underwater. We all know how disorienting it is, how hard it is to hear and see underwater. We don't have access to coherent solutions underwater. When we come up to the surface and say, okay, reality is that this child has, let's say, 4 Fs and 4 Ds, let's say. That is reality. It is what it is. This is how it is right now, whether I like it or not. Now what? Who do I want to be with a child with these grades? Do I want to be in denial and judgmental and critical? If I really see my child and accept that this is where they are, now what? Accepting the reality of the situation lets us ask the child for their input. It lets us be curious instead of just buried in worry. Accepting reality helps us move without defensiveness to set up a meeting with the school counselor, whatever it is. And why do we think it should be different? Well, guess what? It would be easier for us if our kids all had straight A's. Our brain would then easily interpret this, that we're great parents and our child's future is fantastic. Now, what's great is that those interpretations are still available to us, regardless of the letters on the report card. Accepting reality is also us believing that we are great. Our kids are great and the future is fantastic. And today's reality is just today. The hard work is that we have to sit with the uncertainty of how the amazing future is all going to come together. Now, let's say you find out your child has been trying drugs, vaping, or alcohol, things that you feel they shouldn't be doing. But reality is that they are doing it. Our brain thinks that it's dangerous to really admit that they're doing it and to approach the child with acceptance. Our brain thinks that this will give the child our permission to do it. So we go underwater or we go backwards by saying they shouldn't be doing this. This blocks our connection, like Ben Pugh talked about in episode 119. Accepting reality isn't condoning behavior. Our kids are going to make the choices they make regardless of what we condone or don't. We can see it happening and be disappointed. We can see it happening and be hopeful. We can see it happening and wish it wasn't, and yet know that we're still doing our best and be curious. We are complex humans. We can handle the duality of these situations. The key is we take responsibility for how we feel about the reality, so we are responsible for how we respond to the child. I once coached a woman who was stuck in a very painful story that her husband should have not made risky financial choices that put their family in crippling debt. She was so full of resentment and anger and frustration. Her story paralyzed her, and she had been holding on to it like a cactus for a very long time. She just didn't see any way to put the cactus down, and she was afraid that if she accepted the facts of their finances and accepted that she needed to work full-time or was choosing to, her brain worried this would let her husband off the hook and it would mean she was happy with the situation, or she thought it was okay. In reality, it seemed easier to blame him than to accept responsibility that she was working, that she did want her family to be in a better financial situation. We think if the past was different, that we'd have a different present or future. But that isn't always the truth, and it doesn't matter. All of this blocks us from taking new vulnerable steps and uncertain and courageous steps to solving the problem. When we get to the point of accepting that what we have today is what we have, then we get to ask ourselves, okay, now who do I want to be? What steps do I want to take to become the hero here? If I gave up the blame, what new story is going to give me back my power and moves me toward solutions? I know I always blame others when I'm wishing I didn't have to work so hard or show up in ways that just seem hard for me. Now remember, our brain looks to the past to make sure that we learn from it, and it files away things to do for the future. Now, this is very helpful. It's a very helpful part of our brain, our higher brain, our prefrontal cortex. My son will probably remember the stress of not telling me about the book or about not ordering it on Amazon, and he'll make changes going forward. This is when learning from our lessons of the past are useful. The key is not to get stuck in the past. Often our accepting reality means we have to drop the anger that's our false sense of control. It may seem vulnerable at first, but we have to remind our brain we never had control anyway. We can't control other people, and we can't change the past. Our control is coming up to the surface, seeing reality and other people for who they are, exactly who they are with all of their flaws and warts, and also seeing their strengths and superpowers, owning our stuff too, and then deciding, okay, now what? We also create so much less judgment and criticism, which impacts our emotional vibe, which means we're less likely to need food or other instant pleasures since we're creating less unnecessary negative. And we move faster towards the positive emotions, the positive end of the number scale. Now, I do want to give a caveat to all this. Y'all, denying reality can be a coping and survival mechanism for people. I'm not in the business of telling people what they need to see or believe. Let's use these tools for our own reality accepting and reality checking. Other people may need time to have the emotional space to see what's going on. Maybe staying on the negative side of the number line is the way someone wants to live. We can't force progress on anyone. Use this tool for awareness and to see what is preventing you from getting unstuck. It can be hard to see reality for what it is, breaking patterns and shifting from victim to hero. I do this work with my clients. One of my amazing clients made such tremendous changes last year by breaking these patterns that she didn't even know were there, which led her to a new and confident relationship. Her children are thriving and she loves herself in a way that she never has before. The results of coaching are priceless. And for your children to see that you invested in you, they'll feel the difference. In a way, it shows them that they're worthy of a mom who's trying to improve. It helps them see that change is possible. If you would like personalized weekly private one-on-one coaching to break patterns, accept reality, and get unstuck, sign up for a consult call at HeidiBenjaminson.com. A confident mother is the greatest gift to her family, not a perfect mother. Our families want us to feel confident, anchored, and calm. I can help you uncover this version of yourself. Have a great week.